Today, I want to talk about Shia LaBeouf.
So just do it! Make your dreams come true!
No, not that Shia LaBeouf.
Is because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you very much.
And definitely not that Shia LaBeouf. The year is 2003. Evanescence is on the Billboard Top 100. The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King is winning every award known to mankind. And Shia LaBeouf, that Shia LaBeouf, is starring in the movie Holes. Now, the book Holes and the movie has a special place in my heart because it was recommended to be by my orthodontist. And it's one of the few times in my life I can actually remember doing something my orthodontist told me to do.
Oh. You should floss.
I know.
But today, I want to talk about it for a different reason. Because the premise of the book Holes and the story that it tells has something really illustrative for us about the stories that we tell about ourselves. If you're new around here, we like talking about story and story structure a lot. And it's not just because we love nerding out about our favorite movies or our favorite books. It's because stories are the oldest form of human communication. We don't just read stories, we live them. And we tell stories about ourselves. That's because story isn't just something made up by some genius writer somewhere. The story beats and the way stories are structured are actually fundamental to the way that our brains function and process information. Now, I realize that's the kind of sentence that sounds good, but it's more than a little bit vague. What does it actually mean to tell stories about ourselves? And how is it that stories actually help us live our lives? Well, there's a lot of information in the world. You don't need me to tell you this. In our day-to-day lives, we do a lot of different things. You know, there's a common example would be asking you, what did you eat for breakfast last week on Tuesday? Well, maybe you eat the same thing for breakfast every day, but unless you do that, you probably don't remember. That's because what you ate for breakfast last Tuesday isn't actually that useful of a piece of information to you. It's not something that you need to know in order to make future decisions. And that starts getting into how our brains process the amount of information in the world. See, there's too much information to remember everything. And your brain is forced to choose between what's important to remember and what's not important to remember. And it has a variety of mechanisms by which it decides, hey, this is worth keeping and this is worth getting rid of. And one of those most important mechanisms is actually story. Now, your brain has to process what to pay attention to, and stories are one of the mechanisms that it uses. But your brain actually has a lot of responsibilities. There's a lot of different systems running at the same time. And one of those responsibilities is to keep you alive.
Hey, what's rule number one? Party? No.
The brain wants to keep you safe. And that means when your brain is processing information, it tends to privilege the negative over everything else. In his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman did research on a principle that he calls negativity dominance. Now, negativity dominance describes the tendency for the combination of positive and negative events to skew towards an overall more negative interpretation than would be suggested by the summation of the individual positive and negative components.
What?
Now, in English, what that means is that your brain pays more attention to the negative things than it does to the positive things. And if you think about one of your brain's primary jobs as keeping you safe, it makes sense. It makes more sense to pay attention to stuff that's dangerous than it does to pay attention to stuff that could never be dangerous. Now, this probably plays out in your life already. You know, I don't know if you've ever gone through the process of creating something and you're reading the comments on, say, a YouTube video or Instagram, and 100 people could say something positive. But the one thing you remember, the one thing that keeps you up at night is the one mildly negative comment. That's because your brain is privileging the negative information over the positive. Even though there's 100 positive things, you're going to remember the one negative. Or maybe you're looking at a product on Amazon.com and you're trying to decide to buy it. Well, you might, if you're like me, skim past all the 5-star reviews to look for the 2 or 3-star reviews and see what negative thing people have to say about this. Because we inherently know there's more truth in the negative than the positive. Now, what's interesting is that this is actually a principle that has played out in stories for as long as stories have ever been created. The Anatomy of Story is a book by John Truby detailing the 22 steps you take to write a great movie or book. John Truby is an expert on writing stories. One of his rules for creating a compelling character is that a hero can always fall into trouble, but they can never fall out of it. So we intuitively know that if a hero experiences good luck, they're going to have to earn it for it to be believable. But a hero can always experience more bad luck. Now, I love how this principle plays out in the movie Holes. Holes is about Stanley Yelnats. He's the character who always experiences bad luck. In fact, his whole family has been experiencing bad luck for the last 150 years, so it's not even his fault that bad things always happen.
You and your family will be cursed for always and eternity.
And one day he's walking down the street when a pair of shoes falls out of the sky. And then that sets off a whole cascading series of negative events, from being arrested to being sentenced and being sent to Camp Green Lake. Now, as viewers, we don't even bat an eye when all these improbable negative things happen because our brains tend to privilege the negative information over the positive. Now, part of the reason the story in Holes is so believable is because we're probably all more like Stanley Yelnats than we'd like to believe. Now, for Stanley, it was a 150-year curse because his great-great-great-grandpa didn't do something that is now causing all the negative things to happen in his life.
It's all because of your no-good, dirty, rotten, pig-stealing great-great-grandfather.
But in our lives, it's actually our own self-beliefs and the stories that we tell about ourselves. You might not have a curse in your life, but you might tell yourself that the reason you can't get in shape is because you just have a slow metabolism and things are worse for you than they are for anybody else. Or maybe you just can't do math because other people can do math, but your brain isn't wired that way. Or maybe you're just bad at drawing, or I'm just not a creative, or any of the other negative self-stories that we tell ourselves that our brain lets us off the hook for because our brain is designed to pay attention to the negative. Now, this isn't me telling you that you can be literally whatever you want to be. I'm not saying you could go play in the NBA or become an astronaut if you told a better story about yourself. But it is to say that there are probably things affecting your life. There are probably stories you tell about yourself that are not grounded in reality. And while they may not be as ridiculous as a 150-year curse, they're probably just as dangerous. Now, the bad news is that you probably have some self-limiting beliefs that are currently affecting what you can do. The good news is that every hero has a self-limiting belief, at least one, that limits what they're able to do. John Truby calls it the lie in story theory. It's the thing the hero believes about themselves that they have to overcome in order to defeat the enemy. In fact, it's the center point of the internal transformation that a hero goes through, which is the real reward of the quest that results in the external transformation. In other words, you have to attempt something. We have to try something. We have to go on a quest or an adventure to begin to prove to ourselves that the thing that we believe is actually a lie. This is why in the Hero's Journal, the very first thing we have people fill out after their name is the theme of their story. And the way that we identify theme is by asking people what the area of their life they want to tell a better story about is. It could be telling a better story about your body, or telling a better story about creativity, or your fitness, or your finances, or your relationship. Whatever area you have that limiting self-belief, we ask people to identify the North Star of their journey, which is going to help determine the actual goal that they need to set. By establishing a theme for your quest, you do something really special. You give yourself the opportunity to prove evidence against the limiting self-belief. You can establish a goal or a quest that is going to help you prove to yourself that you're actually bigger than that negative self-belief. Remember, John Truby said that heroes can always fall into more trouble. And that's true in real life as well. Bad luck can always happen to any of us. It's 2020, and that's a pretty true statement. But while bad things can happen by accident all the time, no hero becomes a hero by accident. You become a hero by setting out on a quest that forces you to confront that limiting self-belief, by confronting that lie. Thanks for watching. My name is Zach from the Hero's Journal. We created the Hero's Journal to help people like you discover their limiting self-belief and become the hero of their story. So whether there's a goal in the past you just want a little bit of help overcoming, or a pair of shoes randomly falls on you because of generational curse, we can help you out. There's a link below or on screen, theheroesjournal.co. If you want to learn more about the Hero's Journal, we post content every week about story theory, goal setting, and how those things play out in our lives. So if this was useful to you or you want to learn more about that, leave a like, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.